Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Each week we talk to people active in business and the economy about issues that drive growth in the north of England. We're sponsored by Virtue Motors, one of the UK's largest motor retailers. You can see its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb, owner of Recognition PR. We help scores of business people promote their products and services, and some are featured on this podcast. Don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We're in audio on Apple and Spotify and also Amazon. Now, in the studio today, we're focusing on a new business with Joshy Jin, who's the founder of a business called Wowza Box. If you're watching rather than listening, you can see his boxes on my table here. And down the line with Janthi Mills-Ward, she's the joint CEO of the Whole Truck Theatre. And that is a firm that's been a business that's been producing theatre for generations. I've known it ever since I started work. We're going to find out a little bit more about that and the cultural impact that theatre and culture can have on the economy of places like Humberside. Later, my colleague Josh Havakin will speak with Helen Anderson, who's the head of learning and deputy CEO at the Thermal Insulation Contractors Association. So a wide basket of things to discuss on today's edition of the Northern Business Podcast. Well, first of all, Janthi, Joshy, welcome. I'm going to start with you, Joshy. You have brought in these wonderful boxes.
Thank you.
Are quite rightly unashamed at promoting your product, which is Wowza.
Wowza.
And Wowza, the website, by the way, is wowzabox.com. You put box on the end to make sure you get to you. Tell us what the things you get in these boxes. Tell us what the product is.
So if you go to our website and choose some of the dishes that you love so much, on the next day you'll receive a box look like that. And inside the box, you will have all the ingredients you need, fresh, to create a restaurant quality dishes that you choose for under 10 minutes.
Fantastic. And these are Chinese meals or are they Oriental meals in general?
So at the minute, majority of our selections are Chinese. We have some Southern Asian cuisines in there, but in the future, we really want to expand to the whole Asia type of cuisines.
Okay, so tell us how you got to this product, because you weren't a businessman doing mail order in the first place, were you?
No, so I run a restaurant in Newcastle, and during that time, there's one problem really bugs me. It's that the very different skill set for British chefs compared to Chinese chefs. I had to train everybody from scratch, show them everything, and Chinese being the most complex cuisines is not helping at that point. So I came up with a way with redesign my kitchen into like a snake shape or U shape.
All right.
So I divided all the work into different sections, so I don't have to train one person to know everything. So one person just knows this little job, and then I'm the end line to push the dishes out, i.e. cooking. So as I looking at it, I said, if I can replace those hands, some of those hands, with machines, I can serve a lot more people. And with the help of the amazing carrier brands in the UK, I can serve all of the UK from one location instead of my 52 seats, which was my cap at the time.
That's fantastic. Now, your restaurant was in central Newcastle, yes. So you came out of the restaurant and into a small but growing industrial unit in the Team Valley, which is very interesting. It's the first ever industrial estate in the UK, the Team Valley, for people outside the northeast.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Little bit of an interesting fact.
Fantastic.
So you go into the Team Valley, you've got this unit, and how many meals now are you producing and dispatching every week?
So on average, in terms of meals, we do about anywhere between 80 meals to 300 meals a day.
Wow.
So I would say in a week, we produce about 3,000, but that's without any holidays. But if there's any holidays or bank holidays, for example, on last February, there's a couple of days we did 1,500 meals just in a single day, one day.
Right, so from a maximum of 50 50 seats in one restaurant. To all that's 10 times as many easily.
Yeah.
Now let's look at the product that's being dispatched. Now I've been familiar with products, and maybe listeners and viewers like Pasta Evangelists.
Yes.
I've sometimes got the Italian cuisine
amazing
delivered, and it's great. It comes, it's fresh, and it amazes me that I can get fresh herbs, freshly made pastas, and they are within 24 hours. And it's obviously a great testament to our delivery systems, but they seem to come from one headquarters. Now, have you managed to crack that in the same way?
Yes. So every day before 3 o'clock, if you place an order on our website, you get the food most of the time next morning. So within 16 hours. Wow. So that's really quick. And thanks to, the amazing delivery brands out there that's made this industry booming.
So if you want to hold a dinner party on Friday for you and 5 friends, say, and you wanted to have a Chinese meal, then this is exactly the kind of thing you could do. It's straightforward.
Absolutely.
Now, you are wanting to progress it and grow it. So what are the future ambitions?
So right now we're working on 3 things. So we have been not focusing too much on marketing, but we're going to change that to let more people know about us. And the second is we want to introduce more line of products to cater more dietary needs. And third is we want to put some individual meals onto supermarket shelves in the Northeast first. First of all, for delivery boxes, the one barrier is that you have to plan ahead your dinner. But people don't always do that. That's why people turn to takeaway sometimes, because that comes 30 minutes. However, if I be able to put this on the supermarket shelves, people can able to pick up one dish on their way home, knowing this is guaranteed quality, I had it before, and this is cheap as well, cheaper than takeaway, and I just need to do something else, and combined, I can easily make a dinner for 3 people under 15 minutes.
Fantastic. I mean, that is established. I pop into a supermarket and get a fish pie in a wooden box, and it's maybe a bit more expensive than something you pop in the microwave. You put it in the oven, heat it up.
Yes.
And that's established. But to put a Chinese meal like that, not one that you put in the microwave and ping.
Yeah.
You put it in the oven. Or in the pan?
Yeah, in the pan, cooked from scratch, fresh. That's what I want to just emphasize. That's very important for us, because for Chinese food, cooking from fresh is most important because it doesn't lose the taste, the texture, which plays a big role in Chinese cuisine, and also the smell. So you'll be able to smell the food before it arrives at the dinner table. That's the experience you have in restaurants, but you can't have with takeaways or ready meals.
Now, just you were saying when you were talking about your restaurant that it was complex for chefs to do the Chinese meal. Now, have you managed to make it simpler, simplify it for people like myself who might not? I could well be intimidated by the thought of a complex preparation. Yeah,
not even a little bit. Right. Not even 1% compromise. Now, I have give up some dishes I love so much, and to say, okay, you are not for this business model.
Right.
But for the dishes I put on, I make sure it's prepped 100% like I would in the restaurant. The only difference is when customer cook it. And I also choose the dishes that doesn't require a lot of high temperature cooking, which you see often in the Chinese cooking. So that's why we have 50 dishes. Without those restrictions, I can put out 200, but one step at a time.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk about the destination, because you have now got a crowdfund.
Yes.
And you can go on what's the platform that you use? Cedars, right?
Yeah.
So you are asking people like myself and the people watching this podcast, listening to the podcast, to invest modest amounts if necessary. Tell us about the proposition.
So if you go to Cedars website, and we are offering 5% of the company for 150,000 investment, and you can invest anywhere from as low as £10 to, the full maximum. This is just offers some equities for the company in exchange for more people to join the Wowza Box family, because everybody eats. And also I do think our product is good. So you'd be proud to be part of our journey. And I will be proud to have so many people backing our services. I think this is just like a very good interaction between us and our customers.
It is a fantastic way of doing this, and hopefully you will get traction. I'm certainly going to have a look myself, so full declaration, I'll have a look. I was telling you off air, and I'll just repeat it for listeners and viewers. There was a great Northeast company called the Lakes Distillery. Although it was based in the Lake District for its production, it was its headquarters were in the Northeast. Founded by Nigel Mills and other people who specialised in whiskey making. And they founded this whiskey distillery to sell whiskey. Some of it was sold online. They distilled and sold whiskey. And that was crowdfunded in its early days. And it has recently sold for, just in the last few weeks, for more than £70 million. So
fantastic.
If that's the kind of result you could get for Wowza, is that what you're after? You're after racking it up and selling it? Or what are you going to use the money for?
So for this stage, obviously, it's quite modest amount. So they really just help us to the 3 points I mentioned at this stage. But we are going to continue to raise. I'm looking to raise another round within 12 months. That will enable us to move to bigger premises. So we don't bumping shoulders all the time as we are a lot now. And also we are able to really, really build a production line that is ready for war. Because when we enter the food manufacturing mainstream scene, that is a knife fight in there. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah,
but yeah, we need to prepare ourselves for that.
Are you a businessman or a chef?
I'm a chef through and through. I'm just chef and happens to know business a little bit and learning.
It is amazing how many chefs are very entrepreneurial, though, isn't it? You see them, the big famous celebrity chefs, rebrand themselves.
Exactly.
It is something that, because there's a passion for it and there's a desire to replicate it, it is something that seems to come naturally.
And we are good at that things that everybody does, which is eating, feeding. Well, we feed people to be fed, so that's I think why British chefs are on an international level very, I would say, very popular, Well,
look, Joshy, hang around. I'll catch you at the end of the next discussion, but it looks great. I'm even going to have a look myself at putting some money in, and it's pretty sharp. And the Wowza Box, for people watching who want to try it out, Wowza Box, all one word, .com, and that's how you can try it out. Now, let's change the subject a little bit and talk to Janthi Mills-Ward, who's the joint CEO of Hull Truck Theatre Company. Janthi, hello. Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Do you think you'd ever have a box like this to entertain guests?
Yeah, no, I thought it's a good idea. And you tend to do those sort of bigger ones like Get Fresh and things like that. But actually, I'd much prefer to get something like this with a real sort of personal touch in it.
Absolutely. Now, I said at the very beginning that we're a programme about business. We're a programme about the economy. And culture has a very important fit. And you've got a company, Hull Truck Theatre, that has had a massive, long legacy in the north of England. Tell us a little bit about that for people who maybe don't know.
Yeah, well, Hull Truck was set up in 1971, so, over 50 years ago, and it was about creating work for a city that might not see a lot of theatre. So, not those big glossy musicals, but stories that really meant something to a city. So northern stories. And first of all, I think there's an ad in Time Out saying half form theatre company seems other half form. And actually it went from that to having its own smaller venue in a part of Hull to then having a purpose-built 50 million theatre, which, does work here, but takes work out across the country, and a mix of making its own productions, so making sure those northern stories, and that's still really important to us today, but also taking a whole host of music and dance and making sure the communities here are able to sort of access and see that work.
Why is it called Hull Truck Theatre?
And that's because they used to go out in a truck at the beginning. Most people do know the name, but very occasionally people think I possibly work for a trucking company.
Right. Okay. Now, let's take it as read that the productions are interesting and that you've got great productions going on. And let's just delve into the business of the business. The people forget show business. Business is an important part of the word, isn't it? how is it going? What's the economy like? Do people still go to the theatre when there's been we're just coming out of recession? Is the economy still sufficiently tempting for people to spend money on this kind of activity?
People are still going to the theatre, and I think during the pandemic, people saw actually what they were missing, that live experience, and how important that was to their everyday being. It makes us think about our creativity, our empathy, and all those skills and those things we don't maybe get from not seeing a live piece of work. But it is still a really challenging financial climate. A lot of the funding is standstill. So Arts Council funding, if you're lucky to be a regular funded organisation from them, that's been standstill since 2020. A lot of councils are no longer are having to make those difficult decisions on cutting their arts funding. Birmingham have recently done that. But Hull are really stand fast on how important it is to the city. And it's then, the only thing you've got is your ticket prices, and you don't really want to pass that on to the customer, who are also going through a challenging time. So a lot of theatres have had to diversify their income models. Theatre is the prime business. But for example, how do we use our building? We've started running training programs for various big businesses in the city. So our, skill set of being able to kind of try things out and role play, we're using in a different way to add an extra income stream.
Excellent. Yeah, there's no question about it. Actors and training are a good mix. It makes a training course or a training event much more fun for the participants as much as that. Now, you talked about the government, Arts Council and the local authorities and funding, but the government have introduced something new that was announced in the recent budget, which is a theatre tax relief. Do you know much about that and how it could help you?
Oh, it's so important, this. So theatre tax relief has been around for a while, but at quite a low rate, around the 20%. And then during the pandemic, it was raised because actually the government saw how important the arts was to the recovery of the economy. And so they raised that amount, but it was meant to be tapered down. But actually they agreed in the last budget to retain it in perpetuity in that higher level. And what's so important to the whole sector on that is actually the work that's created. It means new work will be created, so of a larger scale as well, which, I think there was an estimate of that actually work was going to shrink by about a third if that wasn't retained at that level. And it really does show that how important that is to the economy for the government to make that decision to keep that theatre tax relief at that level.
Just explain how it works. Who gets the relief? Is it an investor? Is it the theatre company themselves? How does it work?
Yeah, so for us as an organisation, we're able to reclaim 40% of our capital costs when we're creating a production. Right. So, actually making a new production makes it so much easier. And especially new work. New work can be so risky in today because people are booking for things that they know, that they feel comfortable with. But actually it allows more risk in the industry, which I think is really important, because if not, we're not going to be developing those artists of the future, and those really new important stories are not going to be told. Now,
again, going at the business of business, as a company, it's nice you're doing things that are interesting and that are very high profile, but you still have to pay wages and so on. Have you been hit hard by some of the big costs like living wage?
That's been, really, really difficult. We absolutely feel that is the right thing to do, to raise the living wage, and it's an important thing to do. But when you have a fixed funding model, it's really, really difficult. Such a big percentage, nearly 10%. And then you have to think of what the impact is on the differentials of that, of the other members of the staff. So it's been really, really challenging. And, our staff are one of our biggest assets. They're an absolutely huge asset to the organisation, the work create from customer service to finance. So we want to make that possible. But we're having to look at all the other benefits we offer as well, and how we drive the income for the theatre. Going back to that initial point, how can we bring more income into the theatre? Is that ticket price? Is that doing different things?
Well, look, you've got a business that's 53 years old. You've got a business that's, 3 or 4 years, you said?
18 months, a bit over.
Yeah. So very different business models. I wish you both a lot of luck, and I'm sure that you will have a cultural impact for many generations to come, Janthi. And Joshy, we have to have you back and we'll have to have some of these meals.
Of course.
I'm going to order one, see what it's like. And that's what I advise
know.
you to do if you're listening or watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, something different. Over to my colleague Josh Havakin, who spoke with Helen Anderson from TICA.
Thanks, Graham. Today I'm joined by Helen Anderson. She's the Deputy CEO and Head of Learning at TICA. Thank you very much for joining us, Helen.
No worries. Hello, everyone.
So, for those who don't know, can you tell us what TICA is? What does TICA do?
So it's a bit of a mouthful, which is probably why we've settled on an acronym. We are the Thermal Insulation Contractors Association. We wear a couple of important hats. So one of them is that we're the trade association, the only trade association representing the thermal insulation industry. And when we talk about thermal insulation, we're not talking about the stuff you find in houses. We're talking about a commercial and industrial scale, pipework, ductwork. And the other hat we wear is we're the only kind of mainland UK training provider. So we run level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships in thermal insulation. So that's who we are.
Brilliant. I've got to say, TICA is a bit more catchy than the full version of it.
It is. Bit of a tongue twister, the full version, yeah.
So you're the only trade body for it. So obviously,
that's right.
Responsibility falls on your shoulders. And one of the things you're looking at the moment is the diversity of the industry. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and with who?
Yeah, absolutely. So as with much of the kind of wider construction industry, it's always historically been sort of dominated by males. There's a lot of nepotism within the industry where, people who get into the industry are often the sons or cousins or next door neighbours of, and the thing about the industry is it's underrepresented by other genders and other minority groups. But also lots of people don't kind of necessarily want to work in construction. And if the only pool of people that we're trying to attract is males, then we're sort of missing 50% of the population. So when I joined the company a couple of years ago, I was like, we're missing a trick here. So it's really important for us to kind of like raise the profile of the industry with a more diverse kind of network of people. So we go into colleges a lot, and we've done some really specific programs in specific areas where we've tried to engage more females. So last year we ran a project in the Midlands, and we went from having one female every 3 years on an apprenticeship to having about 8 females now, most of them based in the Midlands. And that's kind of catapulted a bit. And we've had other members of our trade association saying, hang on, we want a bit of that as well. So for instance, at the moment we're working with Altrad, who've got their own campaign. Altrad, a big company, people might have heard of them. And they're trying to recruit a team of females to join their Drax power station site in Selby. So we're supporting with them that and the knowledge that we've kind of learned on the journey that we went on last year with the Midlands. So going in the right direction, still a long way to go before we kind of really level the playing field and get more kind of women, and also other minority groups as well that that are underrepresented in the construction industry.
Brilliant. There's one other thing I want to speak to you about, because I know this is affecting your industry and potentially lots of others who are listening or watching the podcast. And that's the Building Safety Act. It's a topic across the wider construction industry, and I know that over at TICA, you've got a few thoughts on it. So I wondered, how's it going to impact thermal insulators? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, quite rightly you said, it impacts the whole construction industry. It was something that came in post Grenfell. So there was a really big inquiry carried out after the tragedy of Grenfell. And what that inquiry found or surmised was that people within the construction industry at every level were kind of all blaming each other and not taking responsibility. So what's really important now with the Building Safety Act, and what's really clear throughout it, is it's about competence, and it's about everyone at every stage of any kind of building, especially the building of kind of tall structures, is responsible and competent. So this is massive for us. We have to make sure that obviously our apprentices are trained to a certain level, and that anyone else within the industry, because see the card scheme for the industry, that they're also showing that competence, and we're all kind of moving in the right direction. And it is a shift for employers that have worked in a certain way for all their careers. And what we're trying to kind of emphasize is that at some point you won't be able to continue to run your business in the same way. At some point there are people who are going to be made accountable, and what the HSC have said is, people will be fined and people will go to prison if they're not compliant. So it's really important for us to sort of be ahead of the curve, to tell our members about this now, so that they can make the changes that are needed for them to kind of have the longevity that they're going to need.
Absolutely. And if people want to ensure that they've got all the proper documentation and competency, you're the guys to do it. I know as I was research before this, you've just expanded your facility, your training facility, so you've got extra capacity, so you can really speed up getting everybody qualified and make sure they've got all the right paperwork. Helen, it's been really interesting to speak to you. It sounds like you're doing some brilliant stuff, bringing forward diversity in the industry, and I wish you all the best. I'll be keeping an eye on what you're doing. Thank you very much for coming on today.
No worries. Thanks. Speak soon. Bye.
Later.
Thanks, Josh and Helen as well. Well, we're at the end of the Northern Business Podcast. Now, by the way, if you wanted to invest in the Wowza Box business, it's on the crowdfunding site Seedrs. Now, don't forget that you spell it slightly differently. It's Seedrs, Seedrs. That's where it is if you want to invest in his business. It's been going 18 months. It's doing great business, and over to you. You invest if you want, because it's your risk. I'm sure that all the explanation on the website, it's certainly of interest to me, but there we are. Now, if you'd like to join us as a guest on Northern Business Podcast, feel free to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks to our podcast producer, Harry Sinclair, and our technical operator, Robin Campbell. Join us next time for the Northern Business Podcast. Don't miss any episodes by liking, rating, and subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.